Noswaith dda. Good evening, a diolch yn fawr iawn am ymuno gyda ni heno. Thanks for joining us tonight and welcome to you wherever you are. My name is Lauren Fear and I'm one of the Trust's directors. You will be able to see and hear me and my colleagues, and you will be able to see the questions that we are asked on screen. But we will not be able to see and the only way we will be able to hear you is through your written comments. You can join in by submitting questions using the question and answer function that you'll find on the top right hand side of your screen, and you will be able to share your any points and views with us in the same way. We really want to hear from you and we want to learn from what you have to say. If we don't get to your question today, we will submit written responses following the session. We encourage people to contribute in Welsh, of course, and you can get subtitles for translation if you click on the settings icon at the top right hand side of your screen. The instructions of how to do that are going to be posted into the sidebar. My colleagues will now introduce themselves.
Good evening, everybody. My name is David Powell. I'm the project director for the new Cancer Centre. And prior to COVID striking, I was going around talking to a number of you about the new hospital. Subsequent to that, we're on a digital platform. So tonight we're using the digital platform to talk to you about the scheme. As most of you will know, we've got planning permission to use the Northern Meadows as a wonderful setting for our patients. And what we're now doing is trying to get planning permission for an access to the north through the Asda site, and also an access on Park Road to help with the construction of the hospital. And following those planning permissions, we aim to go to a competition to invite three bidders in to design in a design competition. And we would like to involve as many of you as we could in the process of selecting something that is something that everybody wants, something that's really high quality. So that'll be the next steps. However, we know that a number of you are concerned about the use of the Northern Meadows, and so in addressing that, we would like to this evening to introduce you to some of our ideas around how we aim to be a really green, sustainable hospital, and how we look to complement the site rather than take things away from it. And so later in a minute, I'm going to introduce you to, or we're going to introduce you to Phil Roberts, one of our expert team who've come in to make this happen. Before I do that, I would like to introduce Professor Tom Crosby, one of the senior clinicians from the hospital, who's been with this all the way.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everybody. My name is Professor Tom Crosby. I'm a consultant oncologist at the Velindre Cancer Centre. I've been involved in the Transforming Cancer Service programme pretty much from the start. Really exciting programme. I also have a national role as National Cancer Clinical Director for Wales. And a really important part of this programme and it has been the development of what we call a clinical service model. And that really is about how we hope to improve the care for patients across all of South East and in some cases all of South Wales. And the fundamentals about that model are to see patients as close to home as possible and deliver that care where they acutely present with their cancer. And a really important development around that is a radiotherapy satellite unit in Neville Hall. But it was very clear from the feedback that we had and the consultation we undertook 5 years ago that there was still a need for a specialist cancer centre, and we're really excited about the development of the new Velindre Cancer Centre, which you're going to hear a little bit more about tonight. So I'll hand over now to Phil Roberts.
Noswaith dda, good evening. I'm Phil Roberts, and my current role is as consultant design advisor for the new hospital. Prior to that, I was an independent board member at Velindre and design champion. So my interest in this particular project goes back 8 years. And my background is in environmental architecture and development. So I'm passionately keen about what we're trying to do, and I hope to be able to tell you shortly something about that. I now pass you back to Laura.
Thank you, everyone. And Phil, are you able to share your slides with us now, please?
Yes, I am, yeah. what I want to do, first of all, is just explain to you that we very specifically wanted to build on this site because we believe the site has a very important role to play in providing a healing and calming environment. There's a lot of research that says that people can gain massive health and spiritual benefits from being in touch with nature, and that is part of the reason why, after looking at a wide range of alternatives, we've actually focused on what we believe is the right place for this hospital. There was quite a lot of public consultation and engagement went on initially when we obtained planning permission. We did engage with the community. It may seem a long time ago now, but these things have a lot of effort put into them, and we will continue to do that. There are three out of that engagement. We learned that we needed to sort of self-reflect and look at what we were doing and be sure and certain that it was the right thing. So we invited a number of specialist advisors into the team to look at our proposals, to test our proposals, and to challenge us in what we were doing. We specifically chosen people with expertise in the particular areas. So we have community engagement, low carbon building, from down to earth. We have a world-renowned expert in zero carbon building from Cardiff University, Professor Phil Jones. We have an award-winning ecologist and forester in Hugh Denman, and an excellent ecologist in Paddy Jenks. We also have Simon Wright, who is an expert in sustainable food production, because we view this hospital holistically. It's not just about the building, it's about the service we're able to provide. So I think three key messages really. First of all, we are totally committed to delivering a building of the highest possible environmental standards and design. I've heard talk of greenwashing being used. This isn't about greenwashing. This is about an absolute commitment to delivering a building of the highest possible environmental qualities. We've also we want to reinforce the message, which obviously hasn't gone out sufficiently strongly, that we have no intention whatsoever of stopping people having open access to the meadows, and we will be encouraging walking, cycling and other recreational activities into what we believe will be an enhanced natural landscape. We will, on that particular theme, we will be protecting, retaining local biodiversity and strengthening it with the support of the expert ecologist and others we have involved, and we will be reaching out to the community for your input as well. I mentioned therapeutic landscapes, and these slides kind of indicate really the fact that there is ample academic evidence that putting people into a really beautiful landscape where they can engage with the environment actually helps the curative process and helps their well-being. So it's fundamental to what we want to do. In order to achieve that, what we want is that the building acknowledges the landscape in such a way that the landscape wraps itself around the building and becomes part of the building. And these slides are intended to illustrate the sort of things and interventions we would like to achieve. We actually, when work is undertaken, there will be still access to the site. We will protect areas of the site, and there will be a 15-metre protected zone around the edge of the site. There will also, of course, be continued access onto the adjacent nature reserves, and I'm led to believe there's about 150 acres which are nearby, which people can obviously continue to access. We do have a green infrastructure plan that's been produced by experts. It's also been questioned by our team of special advisors, and they have reassured us that we are proposing to undertake the right sort of interventions to make sure that we don't damage the ecology or the biodiversity. Also, we want to address the issue of flooding that's been raised, and we had done that prior to the question being raised, by the implementation of sustainable urban drainage proposals, and we will work closely with the local authority to do that. So in terms of biodiversity, We want to protect and encourage biodiversity on the site. We do have to cut some trees down to get access to the site. We will plant 2 trees for every tree we take down, and on the advice of Hugh Denman, who's our specialist forester ecologist advisor, he suggested translocating tree stumps and earth and soil and other organic matters around the felled trees to other parts of the site, so we will actually improve and increase the biodiversity in that way. We will do a lot of tree planting, and we will use appropriate native species, and we will work with the community to find ways of doing that together. In terms of the paving and interventions that you would normally associate with the hospital, I want you to think differently. This isn't going to be a large emergency hospital. This is going to be something quite different, where the interventions into the landscape will be very of natural materials, and we do it in such a way that we protect and preserve any fauna or flora that actually we know is there and we need to deal with. This is a site owned by one of our special advisors who are down to earth. This is a site on the Gower where they have built on this site 5 or 6 buildings, you can see there, and they've done it in such a way, and on Wales's first area of outstanding natural beauty, that when viewed from the air like this, it actually blends perfectly into the background. Our ambition is to achieve something bigger, albeit on a larger scale, for our site. Coming to some architectural inspiration, we've been looking widely around the world for examples of good architecture sitting in the environment. This is a project done by architects Archetype, and this illustrates the kind of external environment we're hoping to achieve on the site. Internally, we're looking at using natural light and natural ventilation with the ability for people within the hospital to engage with the landscape. So the qualities we're seeking, again in this slide, and actually, if I could try and put it this way, this is Maggie's Oldham Centre, and Maggie's have got this wonderful ability to put people at ease with nature. We want to do the same thing with our site, and this slide illustrates the kind of thing we want to achieve. This is a hospital in Denmark, and it just goes to show what's possible when one engages with the landscape rather than dominates it, which is sadly what happens too often. And again, 2 examples of where nature and the landscape have actually been allowed to kind of enter into and in fact over the hospital building in question. We have a very positive approach to carbon management, to energy efficiency, and Phil Jones has prepared for us a whole series of advice on how we approach low carbon design. We will also be using bioclimatic architectural techniques, where you would use green roofs, for instance, to manage water overflow and to improve insulation. We look at utilising local timber. We look at utilising passive solar design techniques to prevent overheating, but to make maximum use of any energy that is possible to produce. Here's an example of a building that we've looked at. We've got several case studies, by the way. This is one of them. This is a carbon neutral building, so it just to illustrate the kind of larger scale building where it's been done currently in the UK. Part of the story, of course, is culture. There's a very strong culture in Velindre Hospital itself, but also in the community, and we want to engage with that culture. And as in illustrations here, we want to make art and culture embedded into the very process of the design of this building. And then moving on to materials, we want to use low carbon, non-toxic, breathable materials, as kind of some of the ones illustrated here. So, you know, sheep's wool insulation, and we want to look at a whole palette of materials that will help us deliver the kind of hospital we aspire to deliver. And then food production. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is that the Northern Meadows were formerly fields providing food to the former Witches Hospital. this whole slide on the left illustrates it, and we see no reason why, with community involvement, we can't do the same thing here. If it's not on the meadows itself, it could be on the roof of the buildings, and we've got many examples of where that's worked. I've seen reference to us not complying with the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. Just to reassure you that well before the Act came into being, we were talking about all the things I've mentioned to you already. We are completely and totally committed to delivering on the Wellbeing of Future Generations goals, and we are working with the Design Commission for Wales, and we will be working with the Commissioner to ensure that we meet all those goals, as we are obliged to do indeed, but also as we want to do. And then as for the way forward, there's a whole series of measures we will be undertaking. These slides are available for you online, so if you want to look at these in detail, or indeed the slide presentation in detail, I have taken a few of the slides out of that presentation online just for timing tonight, but please feel free to have a look at that and come back with us with any questions. So that's it for me for now, and back to you, Laura.
Thank you ever so much, Phil. So now it's over to you. We can see that a number of people are already submitting questions using the question and answer function. Just to remind you, you'll find that on the top right hand side of your screen. So either questions or points that you'd like to make to us, really want to hear from you. You can ask by name or anonymously if you prefer. And just to remind you, we very much welcome questions in Welsh. We will translate them and publish in both languages, and our panel will try to answer the question in the language in which it was asked. So, ready for our first question. This is something you actually referred to in your presentation, Phil. The first question I'll direct to you. Initially, please, and then on to David. So isn't this just greenwashing?
Not at all. I would have nothing to do with it if it was greenwashing. It's my passionate belief. I studied environmental architecture. I've been an environmentalist all my life. I believe that what we are doing is trying to set the bar and raise the bar, in fact, for the best environmentally sustainable hospital in the UK. We are determined to do that, and in no way is it greenwashing. I can give you an absolute promise on that. David, do you want to come in on that?
Yes, just to follow that up, I mean, my take on greenwashing means that we don't mean it, and we absolutely do, and it's the proof of the pudding is in the eating. But if you can see by our actions that we've appointed a design team that are experts in this field, which we don't have to do, it's not what everybody does. We've set a whole series of targets in our design specifications for the bidders, and so they have to meet those targets. They have to comply with our requirements in order to get the contract. And then thirdly, we've taken all our scoring through so that it's not just fine words. There are scores on the doors for their ability to reduce carbon, to blend with the landscape, and all the things that Phil's talked about.
Thank you. So thank you ever so much. And the next question is, why this site? So for that, can I turn to you first, Tom, from a clinical perspective, and then David, if you again could share your thoughts.
Yeah. I think I work across Wales and look at the way cancer services are delivered across in all health boards, and you know, I have to declare, if I had the choice, I would clean slate the whole lot of our developments and build buildings and services specific to the needs of the region and the national interest for cancer services. Unfortunately, as always, we never have that opportunity. We're constantly building and seeing what the options are available for us to develop new services and buildings when we're designing new cancer hospitals. I mean, first of all, I would sort of say that I think it's accepted that the need for a new cancer centre is huge, and we've seen that during COVID, that our ability to be able to isolate patients, for them to come into hospital and have suitable inpatient facilities. Our corridors are too narrow, our rooms in outpatients are too small. The current estate is not fit for purpose, and we certainly can't grow to meet the needs for the future. So in terms of then looking at what the options were from a clinical perspective, it's everything taken into in parallel. It's quite a complex process. So first of all, you need to sort of say what is available, and you also have to say what would be ideal, and you have to marry those two things together. And we ultimately determined that we could develop a centre for excellence for cancer services for South East and South West and South Wales. That would be something that would be really transformational in terms of the way we deliver cancer care for patients in the future. So just as an example, we deliver radiotherapy, and we've got 3 different types of machines and different computer arrangements to deliver that treatment. For the future, we can realign that service so that we're now saying we will get only the right equipment for the next 30, 40 years, etc. So that's been a way that we've been able to transform the way we deliver care for patients in South East Wales. Obviously, at the same time, we looked at other sites, and experts who are on the panel tonight certainly informed us that there wasn't anywhere suitable that we would be able to develop the sort of area and hospital that we want to deliver elsewhere. There are some theoretical advantages to being on a different site, particularly on another hospital site, in terms of looking after unwell patients and also developing academic services. We're absolutely sure we can deliver safe and a very high quality services on the Velindre site, and also we know that we need to work with health boards in a much more integrated way so that we can look after patients closer to home. So all in all, I'm really confident that this site is appropriate. We can deliver high quality care here, and also, although it is obviously a difficult decision regarding using a greenfield site that's local for people in Whitchurch, so for the patients coming from around South East Wales, this is a really positive development in terms of looking after patients in an environment that is conducive to well-being and healing.
Just a follow-up from what Tom says. For me, coming from the outside and looking at the site selection, there are 2 really big advantages that come out, and Tom mentioned one of them, which is the fact that for patients, when they're in coming to this kind of service and in the kind of condition they're in and their families, it is a fantastic thing to be able to offer them an environment whereby they can get in contact with nature. And there's a lot of research on this in terms of health and well-being, but it can't be underestimated the benefit of having a site like this for patients, particularly cancer patients. The second thing is the location, the geographical location, because it sits in a place just off the motorway, whereby the clients who come to and the patients who come to the hospital are coming from the north, from the west, from the east, and also from Cardiff, and it's a spot where you can get to. So trying to bury this site into a town or up some sort of into a valley somewhere would be really difficult for patients and would make their journeys far more difficult. Added to that, the council have been looking with Transport for Wales in terms of metro links. We've been talking to the council about bus links, and again the opportunity to create a public transport hub here around the hospital, including looking at linking up bike trails, etc. It provides that opportunity in terms of access and trying to take cars off the road. So those are 2 real big benefits. There's a sub question there, which is, having said it's a great location, could we use somewhere else on the site? And one of the areas was looked at, could you build on the existing hospital site? And the problem with that is it's far too small, and you're also trying to run a hospital at the same time, so that opportunity isn't there. The second opportunity was looked at was Whitchurch, and unfortunately Whitchurch Hospital was built in another time and for another client group and has very skinny corridors. It's not big enough, and it also is listed. So the opportunity to actually take that building and do something with it is very, very difficult. So the conclusion was reached that the Whitchurch Hospital wouldn't be a good fit for a modern cancer hospital. So which takes you to the Northern Meadow, which with our ambition to provide the kind of space we want to for patients, it gives us that opportunity. And as we said previously, and just to repeat, there's enough space there that we can share it. So the hospital could nestle into the site, and we could then also maintain the opportunity for residents to use it as well.
Thank you ever so much both. So the next question, I am going to come straight back to you, David, if that's all right. It's a building focused one. So can the building be redesigned to be higher, perhaps so to take up less space, and multi-storey car park again to take up less space at the Meadows?
Yes, absolutely. I mentioned earlier on that the opportunity for us all actually is that we're going to run a competition. So we get the chance to pick the best scheme, the one that fits best with our aspiration. And as I've said earlier, our aspiration is to do something which is which doesn't destroy the locality, which blends and provides a community asset. And so with that challenge, then the developers will have a number of tools in their box they could use. And the question mentions a couple of them, but one of the tools is what you do with car parking. And there are some opportunities with the site, because it's sloped, etc., to do some sympathetic car parking, which doesn't lay all over the top of the site, but actually tucks up and takes less room. Equally with the buildings, there are some choices about the buildings. We have got some opportunities to put height in the building, although we're limited to the tree lines to make sure we're not obtruding on the neighbours. But it does give us some opportunities with that. I think Phil mentioned the idea that we could also take the meadow and we could take some of the green spaces over the top of the buildings. And it's something that I've done before, and it has been done before in a number of schemes, and it can be very effective. So you get two things for your money. Number one, you get a hospital building, but number two, you get a usable space which you can use over the top of it. So we will be looking for those kind of opportunities in the competition, and we will be, as I said in my intro, those in the community who are interested, those who want to come with it, even those people who are doubting at this point, we'd like to involve you in that, because we would like to put the pressure on the developers and the builders to make sure they could really maximise the opportunity.
Thank you very much. So I think it's straight over to you again. And there's a comment that someone's made to say you don't have planning permission yet. Do you be able to share your thoughts on that for us, please?
Yes, so we do have planning permission for the site. So for the North Meadow itself, we have planning permission. What we are seeking at the moment is two accesses. So one is planning permission for the ASDA entrance at the top of the site, and planning permission for to extend a temporary construction access which we already have on Park Road to enable us to aid the building of the hospital. But just to be clear, we do have planning permission for the Northern Meadows.
Thank you for making that, providing that clarity. So the next one, Phil, I'm going to pass to you for, if that's okay. So just to read it out, so you say that you'll plant trees. This is all very good, but given that trees do not grow overnight, there will be no benefits for decades. Also, you seem to be suggesting that a small number of patients will have a garden to enjoy, rather than a community having a meadow. So Phil, are you able to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question to answer, simply because there are different views on it. I respect that view. Clearly, there's an initial cost. If you take down a mature tree and put a younger tree, it's quite right, it won't actually have the same initial benefits, and there is a price to pay. But we are committed to planting more than we're taking down. So given a relatively short period of time, maybe 10, 15 years, then those benefits will start to come through. The other part of the question, Laura, please. Lauren, you mentioned, sorry, the first part was about cutting the trees down. The second part was about the benefits.
Yeah, benefits to the community. So we're saying you seem to be suggesting a small number of patients will have a garden to enjoy rather than a community having a meadow.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, wherever one builds a hospital, wherever the site is, there are disbenefits for people living in that area. It's bound to happen. So if we weren't building here, we'd be building somewhere else. If, as has been suggested, we were building on the Whitchurch site, we'd have the same problems there. So you're just taking it from site A to site B. So there is inevitably going to be, you know, a period during which there'll be an element of disruption, but that is the case wherever we build it, and we need this hospital. It's really needed. I think David wants to come in and add to that. Thank you, Lauren.
Just to reinforce the point, what I was going to say is the comment suggests, it says actually a small number of patients. So actually what we're talking here is the patients who have cancer from South East Wales. So there are a lot of people who would benefit from this if we get it right. And again, I'm coming back to this sharing word, but the idea of sharing with all those people who are us or you, etc. People here who have got cancer and their relatives and people who come to visit the site feels to me an important point, which we shouldn't lose. The second point I just want to come back to is the sharing piece, because we are not taking the whole meadow, etc., etc. So although we don't know exactly where the competition will suggest the scheme would sit best in the site. We talked a little bit about making it as unobtrusive as possible. We aren't going to be taking down all the tree breaks, all that sort of area around the site. That's not what we're talking about. This is a big area with area of beauty, and we're talking about taking a proportion of the meadow. So although there will be some impact on the trees because we have to clear some trees to build the bridges, we're going to be sympathetic with it. And again, I made the point earlier, actually, is the reason for picking the design team that we have, and Phil introduced them at the beginning, is there's expertise in there about how you avoid ecological damage while you're doing it. So if we were doing this as a typical developer, you know, we may have a designer, you know, it might be on a win bonus, etc. We would just get in there and do it. What we're talking about here is recruiting people into the team who understand this point. And our mission actually is to minimise the number of trees we take down, to make sure we're being as sensitive as possible. Bear in mind there will be some impact, and then to do our utmost to restore. So whatever we've done, whatever we've taken away, is to bring it back. And although it mentions gardens in the comment, and we do want to put some gardens in amongst the hospital, we also see the strong point about the meadow retaining. And so the natural meadow, and Phil's drawings, which he showed earlier on, is showing the meadow as opposed to sort of trimmed gardens coming up and touching the sides of the buildings, etc. So we are not looking to replace all that meadow land, which is wonderful. We are looking to do something as a part of it, and we're looking to be sensitive.
Thank you both. And David, I'll come back to you on this next question, if that's okay. So 4 years of construction traffic on Park Road, destruction of the railway cutting, displacement of thousands of animals and birds, misuse of land quarry field, and waste of public money building a huge bridge to access an unsuitable site. So if you could share your thoughts on those various elements, please.
Yeah, so there's four comments in one there. So I'll start with the top. In terms of construction traffic, then actually, to be clear, because we've in the planning we've had to ask for a window for traffic, so they can come in a window, because we're not entirely sure when the project starts and finishes. Within that window, the heavy traffic for building a new hospital tends to be something like half the duration of the construction. And so the plan for construction of the hospital at the moment is 27 months. So we're talking something in the tune of 13 to 14 months of heavy traffic. That's what we're talking about, as opposed to 4 years. So I want to be clear about that, because it is confusing, can be misleading in the planning application, because we're looking for a window. So the disruption is limited to that time. We will, as part of the contract, and I've mentioned this in some of the community meetings we've been doing, look to put mitigations in, because we understand the point. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we minimise disruption. And a number of these guys who come to build this are used to building hospitals or big buildings in the middle of city centres, where they have to tread extremely carefully. They're driving through massive metropolises to build their hospitals. So what we will be looking for is for them to avoid school hours, etc. We'll be looking for them to avoid Saturday afternoons and Sundays. We will be looking for them to flow their traffic so they don't all come in one go and block the junctions as they're coming in. And we'll be looking for them to also, all our contracts have a community benefits element to them. So we'll be looking for them to provide compensating community benefits to local people. And again, we've had a number of ideas about what these might be, but there's an understanding that there is an impact. And the idea of community benefits enshrined in the Welsh Act is to make sure that people understand that and will contribute to the community to make sure there's net gain. So that's the construction point. In terms of destruction of the railway cutting, well, actually, I suppose again, this has come up in the conversations with the community. For us, we need to get into the cutting for a short period in order to build bridges, but that is a temporary, it's an in and out type arrangement. I think the big issue for the community, and I think it is a net benefit, is that there have been plans to put a metro extension through the cutting and to improve public transport in this part of Cardiff, which, again, coming from the outside, it feels like it's badly needed. And the upside of that is you get more public transport, more connection, less people in cars, less emissions from vehicles, and so there's a contribution to saving the planet. The downside is the biggest impact on that cutting would be the provision of a railway back through that cutting. So there are upsides and downsides to that, but I think that big impact is mostly related to improving transport infrastructure as opposed to the actual hospital itself. We will be in and out, as I say. In terms of displacement of animals and birds, then I come back to my previous point, actually, is that we have recruited a team who have expertise in this field, and so there has been an amount of work done already on this. So there's been a load of work done, and again with some of the local conservation agencies, etc., to look at what one might be done. And there is a plan which looks like it can minimise that impact. There's always going to be some disruption, but could minimise it. And we will use our expert team to contribute to that and make sure that we're not creating any unnecessary disruption. We also think there is some opportunity here to bring some local species back into improve biodiversity. So we're very interested in looking at that whole subject about what the current flora and fauna are on the site, and can we do something to enrich in it as part of our development so that gain comes back rather than just loss. There's a point, actually there's 5 points in here. So Lady Corey Field's in there, and again that's a sensitive point because we are using Lady Corey to get in to build our bridges, but again the commitment is there to restore it, and we're looking to restore it as quickly as we possibly can once we've come in. So we come in, build the bridges, come out again and restore Lady Corey's. The last one is a waste of public money building a huge bridge to access an unsuitable site. Well, the site, I do believe, is a fantastic opportunity, as a site as said previously, to treat cancer patients on it. So I don't think it's an unsuitable site in that respect. And in terms of spending money on the bridges, then again I can say this because I've been developing hospitals for a long time now, that there is always an access. There's always an access bill, so you have to pay to get to a site, and if it's a greenfield site or a brownfield site, it doesn't matter what it is, you have to prepare it, and bridges and the amount of money being spent on the bridges here is no way out of keeping with the kind of money we might spend on preparing a brownfield site, or the kind of money we might spend on preparing another greenfield site. So there is no, again I can say this coming from outside, there is no waste of money on those bridges.
Thank you so much. For this next question, Phil, I will hand over to you if that's okay. So this is a question from Sue. Thank you ever so much, Sue. You mentioned creating an enhanced natural habitat. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that? For example, there is a lot of scrub on the meadows, which is very valuable for wildlife, but perhaps not very aesthetically pleasing. Will areas of scrub be left for biodiversity?
Absolutely. This isn't about being aesthetically pleasing. This is about creating an environment that respects what's good on the site already. If I can just make a point that Hugh Denman, who's one of our advisors, won 2 years ago, I think it was, won the gold medal for UK Sustainable Forester of the Year. and he's been involved very heavily in the reintroduction of pine martens into Wales and under supporting red squirrel population. So we have somebody on board who will advise us on that. We have ecologists who will likewise be able to bring those skills to this particular problem. The developments that Hugh Denman's been involved with are continuous cover forestry, so he never does any clear felling, and that continuous cover forestry actually does enhance biodiversity, and there's plenty of evidence to prove that. So we'd want to approach the meadows working with ecologists and local naturalists and the community to actually ensure that we did respect everything that was on there, and I think it's vital that that's done. I hope that answers that question, Sue. Back to you, Lauren.
Thank you. So the next one again on to you, David, if that's okay, in terms of planning. So the meadows are also an impractical site. A proposed access route will cost 27 million. Strangely, however, BCC's own planning statement says that the road is not strictly necessary, therefore raising the question, how can such a waste of health service money be justified?
Thanks, Lauren. Yes, so there's 2 to 3 points again in one. As I was saying previously, well, the first point is impractical site. Well, as I've said previously, and I have developed on all kinds of sites, this is not what I would call an impractical site. There's a lot of reasons why this site is practical. And if I just come back to the point I was making earlier, actually, the idea that you could draw an entrance off a motorway, which we have the ability to do, and put a bridge across to it without disturbing local houses, etc., so that you're not dragging through a city, it is a prize worth having. And it takes traffic away, which is currently working its way down Park Road, down Velindre Road, etc., into the current site. So the practicality is all about that opportunity to come in from the north, coming from a main road artery, and associated with that is the point I was making earlier about the fact that there is a metro station there already, which we're bringing the site towards. There's this plan to put another metro site in, which is great. There are some cycling trails around the site which aren't all connected at the moment, and there are some opportunities to improve pedestrian access, disability, etc. So that opportunity is there, and the reason why that opportunity is there is because of the practical nature of the location of the site, which is much better than, in that sense, than trying to enter the site from the south or from the east, to trying to do something on the Whitchurch Hospital where you've got to thread your way from through the traffic, etc. So that's a point I'd like to make. I also I said earlier, actually, there was a point about the site, someone mentioned it in another meeting, but the fact that the site has some interesting slopes on it does create some opportunities for us to simply and without spending inordinate amounts of money to do some hiding, so to do some shielding of the scheme, to put some car parking under a slope, etc. So there's some opportunities there for developers to do something elegant and in keeping with the site. So again, it's a practical point. It really helps with the site. The other piece about it is that, which again I mentioned it previously, but the proposed access route will cost 27 million. Actually, the number's inflated because the 27 million is actually all the enabling works, which includes bringing utilities in, includes what's called a site strip, but it's preparing the ground for the hospital. So there's a whole rack of enabling works within that number. And as I said previously, that every new hospital has this initial cost to it, and in some cases it can be a lot more than that. So this is not unusual. It's not, as the question suggests, a waste of health service money. The idea, which has been seen by the planners here, is there's an opportunity there to spend the money wisely on a site that has all kinds of opportunities for it. And I think the challenge is just making sure in taking those opportunities, we're not taking something precious away from the local community, so that we are trying to have our cake and eat it. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you, David. So our next question is from Anne. Thank you ever so much, Anne. So Tom, I'll pass to you on this one first, if that's okay. If you are going to need satellite centres within the next 10 years, Wouldn't it be better to start building these now? Then you could build a slightly smaller centre on the Whitchurch Hospital site, leaving the Northern Meadows alone for all to enjoy.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And it's a funny format, isn't it? This, so we can't see people who are asking the questions and everything else. And I was actually trying to sort of say on the previous question, having lived in Rada and Llandaff and worked in Velindre for 25 years, I think now. You know, there's a massive issue with traffic and parking in the current site. You know, I wish some of my colleagues would park a little bit more considerately in Whitchurch, but at the moment patients and staff are competing for valuable and not enough parking space, which means we overflow into surrounding areas to park, and also we create a huge traffic problem sort of locally, particularly down Velindre place. So that's a major issue that we should be trying to overcome with the new hospital. So the question then was about a new sort of satellite centre. I'm a clinician. I'm only a doctor, but I'm working with my planning colleagues, and effectively we are the service model will mean proportionately less patients coming to the specialist cancer centre, far less than currently do. So the model is that we will have a number of specially designed outreach locations. They've been called various things, but Velindre at locations in local health boards, and they will deliver outpatients, chemotherapy treatment, and hopefully in one location in Abergavenny and Neville Hall, a radiotherapy satellite unit. And the plans are to in fact start that radiotherapy satellite and other outreach locations before the development and patients are coming to the new Velindre cancer site. My planning colleagues can sort of chip in, but just to deliver what we have now in hospital environment with building regulations that are appropriate to modern regulatory rules, means you need a much bigger hospital base. So I'm sure my colleagues will talk about the numbers and why we can't do that on the existing site. But just to reassure people, everything around this is saying we will only bring patients down into Whitchurch, into Cardiff, that absolutely need to travel to Velindre. Everything around a service model, everything our clinical colleagues are telling us, everything our patients are telling us is, as long as we can deliver the same quality of care closer to home, that is where they would prefer to be treated. They do need some reassurance that the service locally will be as good as that offered in Velindre, but we're determined to do that. At the moment, patients come to us for certain things that only we can do, but we're at the moment we have a relatively fragmented approach to delivering care closer to home. If we do that by design as part of the Transforming Cancer Service model, we hope to move a lot of chemotherapy, outpatient assessments, and 20% of our radiotherapy patients to treat those patients away from Velindre and Cardiff.
And David, did you want to come in there?
Yes, thank you. It's a good question, and I think Tom's covered the main point. I just want to say, just from a point of view of what we are doing, is that the scheme has been refined down to the level which reflects Tom's point about a disaggregated model. So what it's doing at the moment is addressing a massive demand in cancer treatment, so that more and more people are coming to Velindre, and there's this upward graph which is busting the current hospital. So that's all coming anyway. So there's new demand, etc. And as Tom said, we need more spaces. We need more spacing. And those of you who've any of you who've experienced COVID or had to work in an environment where you're too crammed in, the idea we need to let the spaces out a little bit to make sure there's enough room for people to get treated with some elbow room. So taking that into account, the scheme has been designed in such a way that it's the minimum that we can get away with, if you like, on the Velindre site, and everything else is pushed out into the satellites. And then we are working on a satellite now. So there's an Annular embedded satellite scheme that's currently in design, and we've just been looking at the designs of that. And so that's coming very rapidly up to the Neville Hall site, and that will allow us then to get some patients off the site here and into that site there. So the scheme. So the reason we were able to share the bed, as I was saying previously, the reason we're able to do something which isn't totally overtaking the site is because of this hub and spoke model and our development of satellite schemes. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you very much, both. So next question, David, I'll pass back to you on initially, please. So why, if the existing Whitchurch Hospital site is listed for houses, office and retail, and the site is bigger than the Meadow site?
Yeah, so there are a number of constraints on the Whitchurch site, which I did briefly mention previously. One of the big issues is that whatever happens on the site, there's a need to regenerate and reuse the old Whitchurch Hospital with all its history and its place in the community. So that needs doing as part of any development. And the problem we've got is it's sitting in a place which is taking, it takes quite a bit of space out of that site. So the idea of looking at that, which the guys did look at it, was to see, could that Whitchurch Hospital site be a cancer centre? The difficulty, as I was saying previously, is that if you look at the brief for a modern cancer hospital, it has a series of spaces in it which are tooled to taking CT scanners, big pieces of kit, taking state-of-the-art diagnostic technology, and the ward sizes, taking into account the point I was making earlier about space, are up around the 1,500 square metres a ward, etc., to take the patients. So there's a whole lot of spaces required for a modern cancer hospital. If you look at Whitchurch, it's all these tiny little spaces. It's these very small little runs of building. It winds itself through some very, very narrow corridors, etc. It just doesn't lend itself to a cancer hospital. So it produces an immediate stop, if you like, to trying to think about how that site might be used. On the other hand, some of those uses have been mentioned are much more natural bedfellows with an old hospital site like this, and some of you may have been aware of this or may have seen it before, but there have been a number of these old institutions that have been successfully converted into apartments for those kind of uses, because they're of a size and a nature which makes it work. And so you can actually get a development out of it which reuses the historical building but doesn't destroy the fabric and doesn't create more of a problem than before you started. So I think that's the reason why the matching has been made as it is. Alongside that, there is a number of sports pitches, etc. So there's a number of sports which, again, from the point of view of Whitchurch community, and we've met a lot of the sports clubs, etc., then they're valuable. I mean, you have a lot of people here playing sport. It's part of the culture of this area, and you'd want to keep that. And I think the idea of maintaining all that sporting presence on site is something very valuable and should be supported. And as I've said to a lot of the sports clubs guys, actually, it's a good match for a cancer centre. You come into a hospital, you're coming for treatment, etc. You can look out your window and you can see a game of cricket or a game of rugby or a game of football going on, or a game of bowls. So I think there's a natural sort of fit for all these various functions on the site. And if we get this right, and we're saying we will, and if you come with us, then we will involve you in it. Then what you actually get is you get meadow, you get green areas, you get a cancer hospital, you get sports pitches, and you get a sympathetic renewal of the old Whitchurch Hospital. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you, David. And we are almost out of time. We do have a lot of questions that we haven't yet got to. So thank you to everyone for your participation. And as I mentioned at the start, if there are any questions that we haven't got to tonight, we will follow up in writing. So I think we've got time for the two more, if we just go a little bit over, that are already published, and then we will sum up. So the next one I'm going to pass to you, please, Phil. What about the heronry at Asda?
Okay, good question. And what I would say is, before we actually commence work on site, we will have to undertake another survey, geological survey, of every part of the site that we are going to disturb. That is a planning requirement, and is part of our plan that we will investigate tree holes, nesting sites. All of that will be done prior to the work commencing on site. As far as I'm aware, I'm not aware that we are actually doing anything detrimental to the heronry, but I will have to check up on that. But please be reassured that we will take full attention to make sure that we do address any issues like that. That's part of our plan.
Thank you, Phil. So this is the last question we will cover this evening. And David, again, if I can pass to you, please. So can you reassure residents of the Hollybush estate that no hospital construction traffic will access the land via the emergency bridge when it's constructed?
David, if you speak, we can hear you anyway. We're just having a little bit of an issue switching video feeds at the moment.
Okay, well, in that case, there's a short answer, which is, can we reassure residents of the Hollybush estate that no hospital construction traffic will access the land via the emergency bridge once constructed? Yes, we can reassure residents that no hospital construction traffic will. We're going to make sure we prevent that, and we will build in clauses in the contract to make sure that they comply. And we have had a conversation with the Hollybush Residents Association, and we know this is always an issue in terms of building, in terms of preserving the residents' access to their parking spots, etc., etc. And we are going to work really hard on this to make sure that we get the contractors to comply. And we've promised the Residents Association that they can come with us and make sure that we're putting these clauses in the contract. If there's a problem, we'll hit them hard. The contractor, that is. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you, and apologies to everyone that you've had to look at me while Phil and David have been speaking there. So thank you very much to everyone for taking part. And just to summarise some of the main themes, so we're making some notes as we've gone along. So firstly, ensuring we can deliver a green building and retaining the key elements required by the community. We've been talking about working with the community to ensure we can demonstrate how we will minimise disruption during construction. We've been talking about protecting and improving the natural habitats and history of the site, ensuring that we provide as much care locally and only providing specialist care at the new cancer centre, so ensuring we use as little space as possible. And finally, I've heard that once built, ensuring that we honour our commitments. So, for instance, no traffic or parking where it shouldn't be. So I hope that reflects some of the answers that you've heard this evening. And I hope it's been as useful for you as it has been for us. If you, as Phil mentioned, if you want to take a longer look at his slides, you'll find them on the Transforming Cancer Services website. Alongside the longer document that he mentioned, which sets out our ambition to develop the greenest hospital in Wales. As I said a number of times, thank you so much for all your questions and comments, and we will get back to you in writing. We are also doing another public question and answer session tomorrow at 6 o'clock on the My Whitchurch Facebook group. Thank you for bearing with us with a few of the technical difficulties. As you can see, we are a healthcare team and not a polished production unit. So thank you for bearing with us, and diolch and nos waith dda.